Joining me now is Jill Wine-Banks. She was a Watergate special prosecutor, served as general counsel to the U.S. Army from 1977 to 1980. Jill, welcome to On Point.
Hi, Ray. Thank you for having me here.
Let's look at the laws that guide elections in the United States. Is it illegal to meet with a foreigner to talk about national campaigns?
It isn't illegal to meet with a foreigner. It is illegal to take anything of value from any foreign national, let alone from a foreign government. And there's every evidence that Natalia was an attorney for the Russian government. But even if she wasn't, she was a foreign national.
But if, as Donald Trump Jr. says, there wasn't a proffer, but nothing actually changed hands, is that illegal?
It is. We have conspiracy laws in America, and if you conspire to violate the law and you take an act in furtherance of that conspiracy, then you have violated the law. So here you have a clear message in the email saying, I have official government documents that are incriminating to Hillary that would help your father, and I want to help your father. It's part of the Russian government's effort to support him. And you set up a meeting, that's an act in furtherance, and then you have the meeting. Even if you end up not liking what's proffered, you have violated the campaign laws by seeking to accept something of value, and there has been a lot written about this being of value, the negative information. So that's a violation.
Support for On Point and the following message come from Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/onpoint. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
This is On Point. I'm Ray Suarez, in for Tom Ashbrook. We're talking Donald Trump Jr. What seeking out dirt on Hillary Clinton from a Russian lawyer means for the Russia investigation, possibly for his father's presidency. You can join the conversation. Have these latest revelations changed both the investigation and the inevitable defense from the White House? Are you now more convinced that there's something there? You can follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook at On Point Radio. In an interview Monday with NBC News, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president and his campaign manager, responded to the allegations of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign.
I can tell you as the campaign manager in the last months of the campaign, the winning campaign, that we did not meet with Russian officials, and there's no collusion.
Richard Painter, former ethics lawyer under President George W. Bush, criticized Donald Trump Jr. on MSNBC Sunday for meeting with the Russian attorney.
This is unacceptable. This borders on treason. If it is not itself treason, depending on whether the New York Times story is true. But this is a very, very serious situation. We should not treat this lightly. And the fact it was a 10-minute meeting is irrelevant. You can accomplish a lot by way of damaging your own country, assisting an adversary in espionage inside the United States in 10 minutes. And we need to make sure this never happens again.
Joining me now via Skype from Dallas is Lee Spieckerman, president and CEO of Spieckerman Media. He's a Fox News commentator and former presidential campaign advisor to Newt Gingrich. His Twitter handle is @Spieckerman. Lee, welcome to On Point.
Great to be with you, Ray. Thank you.
What should we make of this latest news and these emails released by Donald Trump Jr. himself?
Well, first of all, I think anybody that watched Donald Jr. on the Hannity interview last night would see that he was not defensive. He was very authentic. He didn't look like he was hiding anything. And while the New York Times intended to dribble out those emails a little at a time in multiple stories, he took the initiative, took the bull by the horn, and released all the emails, the entire email thread. So I think that there speaks to motive and mindset. But I do want to just step back for a second here. First of all, let's look at the kind of the geopolitical situation. We keep hearing words irresponsibly thrown around like treason. Let's look at who our real adversaries are in the world. North Korea, which is about to be able to deliver a nuclear missile and already close to being able to set off an EMP explosion in our atmosphere, which could shut down a lot of American electronics. We have Iran, still developing nuclear weapons. We have China, which has a $500 billion goods surplus with the U.S. and is literally sucking the life out of our economy, and that's been going on for decades. So you have three countries there that have done things that are very deleterious to our country directly and are enormous immediate threats to us. Russia is not even on that radar screen. So let's start there. Secondly, in World War II, we won World War II by allying with Stalin, who was a genocidal demon that makes Putin look like Justin Trudeau. Sometimes you work with people, you ally with people that are not run by the most desirable leaders in the world. And Christina Vanden Heuvel, who is the publisher of The Nation and knows more about Russia than just about anybody talking about Russia, not exactly a right-wing Trump fan, made very clear that we can't have another Cold War. We have got to work with Russia. That's very important. Russia is the only other country on the planet that can evaporate humanity.
Well, Lee, let me stop you right there, because I don't think anybody denies that it's a complicated world where other countries don't have the United States' interests at heart. But at the heart of this conversation is a proffer from a friend of Donald Trump Jr., Rob Goldstone, who is also a friend of people well connected in Russia, who offers Donald Trump something that is, quote, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. Donald Trump Jr. doesn't say in the email exchange, oh, no, get that out of here. Let's stay 100 miles away from that. Don't take things from the Russians. He says 8 words in response. If it's what you say, I love it.
Well, Ray, it's never good. It's never acceptable when a foreign nation attempts to get involved in the U.S. campaign or the election. That's a given. Let's stipulate that. But, Donald Trump Jr. and the entire Donald Trump operation, including now President Trump, are not politicians. They don't look at things quite the way other people do. They are outsiders, and things that would perhaps sound alarm bells with people in Washington wouldn't necessarily to outsiders. But let's also look at the fact that Donald Trump Jr. Did not take any information from this woman. She was not a representative of the Kremlin. It should be noted that U.S. intelligence didn't even know about this woman. She was granted a visa and a waiver to get a visa into the United States, which put her under greater scrutiny, and she was allowed in. So she wasn't being monitored. So obviously she was not seen as a threat to the United States. And what Donald Trump Jr. did, quite frankly, is he looked and listened to the sitting president of the United States at the time, President Obama, who had lampooned Mitt Romney in 2012 when he said Russia was a threat to the United States. He said, I think in the 1970s want their foreign policy back. They made fun of Romney. He had done things. He had taken missiles out of Poland or shelved the idea of having missiles in Poland and Czechoslovakia, which the Russians wanted to happen. He had invited Russia into Syria and outsourced part of our Middle East foreign policy and opening the door to the horrific war crimes that have occurred there that Russia was involved in. So this all happened under President Obama. That's not exactly how you treat a major adversary.
But it also not exactly anything to do with Donald Trump Jr. It's all very interesting history. It's all very interesting context.
It has a lot to do with it.
But it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that a senior person in the Trump campaign, now president's own son, his son-in-law, who is now on the payroll and working in the White House, and the then campaign manager all agreed to this meeting, all understanding what had been proffered in the original exchange with Rob Goldstone.
They understood that, but again, all he wanted to do was listen to what he said, and it is very important to understand the backdrop. If Russia is not an enemy, if they're not involved in combat against the United States, then this whole idea of treason is off the table. And Jeffrey Toobin, Turley, Dershowitz have all said that there's not a crime here. That's a ridiculous statement by Tim Kaine and by others. So he wanted to hear what they had to say. No information was transferred, and again, Russia was not even, and certainly isn't even today, among the top threats to the United States. It is not an enemy. So that is, to put it in that context, is extremely important.
Lee Spieckerman is with us from Dallas. Jill Wine-Banks is still with us from Chicago. Jill Wine-Banks, in law, how does intent operate? Does it change things? And if intent is there and action is not, if, as Lee Spieckerman suggests, Donald Trump Jr. is telling the truth and nothing of value was exchanged, where are we?
Well, first of all, there are so many things that I feel I must comment on in what has just been said, but I'll answer your question first and then go on to those. Intent is an element of almost any crime, and if there's no action taken, that's a problem. But here we have proof of an action. He intended to get information from the Russian government, and remember, this was official documents and information coming directly from the Crown Prosecutor of Russia, from the Russian government. And he was told that the woman was a Russian government lawyer. So he intended to get information from a foreign national, from a foreign government. He met with her, which is an action. And we don't know that he didn't get information from her. We do know that he said in his email, and I think your first speaker, Mr. Mazzetti, was quite correct, that it hasn't gotten enough attention. He not only said, I love it, especially later in the summer. That is very important because when was this information released? They met on June 9th. It was released on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. It was weaponized to do the maximum damage that it could possibly do to the Democrats. It led to the resignation of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It created chaos. It was extremely harmful to the democratic process, not just to the Democratic Party, but to democracy. And to say that Russia is not an enemy is not correct. I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Putin in the late 90s when I was chairman of Motorola's cellular operating company in St. Petersburg, Russia. And I can say things have changed dramatically from the 90s. And now Russia is a country that is dedicated to destroying NATO, to destroying democracy. It is definitely not our friend. And it was intending, according to these emails and according to every single intelligence agency that has looked at this, to hurt the campaign of Hillary Clinton and to help elect Donald Trump. And it succeeded in doing that. So there's plenty of action that will guide this. And going further, when your question is about the law, in addition to any violation of campaign laws and conspiracy laws, can't we look at this as a political question, as a voters' issue? Let's look at the morals that should guide this country. How do we want to be run? And the argument that these were amateurs, that they didn't know what they were doing. Do we really want amateurs running the country? Don't we want people who know things? And some things are so inherently wrong that it seems to me that anyone would have known that taking information intended by a foreign government to sway the election is wrong. It's just per se illegal and wrong. It's immoral. And those are things that are very, very important.
Lee Spieckerman, let me get a quick response from you, and then we'll go to the phones.
Well, all I'm going to say is, first of all, if there's such a bright line between what political operatives should be doing and getting involved with foreign governments, why was the Democratic National Committee directly collaborating with Ukrainian operatives under the direct direction of Poroshenko to undermine now President Trump, to try to trump up this entire, pardon the pun, this entire Russia story during the campaign. So you had the Democrats working actively, according to Politico, with the Ukraine to undermine Trump. So, you know, this whole idea that they are purer than the driven snow and the Trump campaign was doing something untoward is ridiculous. Secondly, I'm not an attorney. I do know, as I said, that Jeffrey Toobin, Jonathan Turley, Dershowitz have said there's no crime here. If conveying opposition research is conveying something of value and violating campaign finance laws, then boy, we have hundreds and hundreds and perhaps thousands of campaign law violators in this country, never mind around the world. So that's specious in and of itself. And there cannot be a conspiracy unless there's a conspiracy to commit a crime. There is no crime here, as some of the most illustrious legal minds in this country. By the way, I believe all of them are Hillary supporters, or certainly not Trump supporters. We know Dershowitz voted for Hillary Clinton. And they say there's not a crime here. You cannot have a conspiracy without a crime. And I just want to say quickly, Donald Trump's own party was trying to keep him from getting the nomination in June of 16. The media had locked arms trying to demonize him and destroy the campaign. The leftist establishment obviously was trying to destroy the campaign. So, frankly, when you're up against a $1.5 billion juggernaut in the Hillary Clinton campaign, maybe you listen to things that you wouldn't otherwise. But that is just a demonstration of frankly, the entire political environment in our country, how caustic it's become, frankly, what it takes for a non-establishment outsider candidate to even attempt to upend this atrocious order that we've had in place that's undermined American workers, that has directly compromised U.S. security, unlike the implicit threats from Russia. These things were allowed to fester under the Obama administration, unfortunately. And I'm not with those that think we should be wantonly demonizing former President Obama. But let's just be honest. He did not treat Russia like an enemy. He invited them into Syria. He he shelved plans to put in missiles that they didn't want in Eastern Europe, which alarmed our ally and a NATO member, Poland.
We're not litigating the Obama administration right now. We're talking about Donald Trump, what he did and what he didn't do. Let's go to Buffalo, New York. Nate is standing by. Nate, welcome to the program.
Hi, Ray. I have 2 points. One is that I see 2, at least, clear criminal violations. One is, if you look at the campaign finance law, it mentions promises, explicit or implicit, from a foreign party. So saying Russia wants to give you information, and then you saying, I want that information, that constitutes a criminal violation as I read the law. 2, there's the disclosure forms. We have yet another meeting that hasn't made it onto disclosure forms like it should have. And my second point quickly is that the other side doing it is not a legal defense. It's not a valid defense. If one gang member appears in court and says, well, I only killed the member from the other gang because he killed a member from my gang first, it doesn't matter. It's still murder.
Nate, thanks a lot for your call. Let me get quick responses from Jill Wine-Banks and Lee Spieckerman. Jill?
I agree with Nate very much, and definitely not a defense. If there is any evidence to support the allegations made about the Ukraine and the Democratic campaign, they should also be investigated. But right now, that's a diversion from what's in front of us right now. The man who is the President of the United States may be involved in colluding with the Russian government to upturn the democratic process of elections, and that is a serious issue that needs to be investigated right now. And yes, one of the points Nate mentioned about the disclosure forms seems to be getting lost. One of the Trump administration's favorite tactics is diversion. And so we go on from one episode to another, from one violation to another, and we keep forgetting the old ones. But of course, I'm
going to have to jump in there because I have to give Lee Spieckerman a chance. Okay. We have about 40 seconds left before the break. Lee?
Well, Jill is an esteemed attorney. I challenge her to name one time in campaign finance law when passing on opposition research was treated or prosecuted as a thing of value or an illegal campaign contribution. That, frankly, is ridiculous. Listening to opposition research or dirt that somebody might have on an opponent does not constitute receiving an illegal campaign contribution. It has never been prosecuted, so there's no history there whatsoever. If she can find a case, then I'd love to hear that.
Well, Jill Wine-Banks, we are going to have to leave it there. Watergate Special Prosecutor, thanks for being with us. And Lee Spieckerman, Fox News commentator and former presidential campaign advisor to Newt Gingrich, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.